We know that mandates are coming very soon, but where they're coming from might surprise you. You need to be ready to make some serious decisions here in the near future. So in this video, we're going to talk about where the mandates are coming from and what the justification for all this is going to be. Hey everybody, it's Magic Prepper. Today we're talking about the fact that mandates are imminent. They are on their way. But originally we all would have thought that they were coming from the federal government, when in fact they are actually coming from the private sector. And it's something that you need to be very aware of very soon here, and that this is all going to accelerate very quickly due to FDA approval. That's what a lot of these entities have been waiting for in order to flip the switch. And that approval is on its way. And if you're worried about what might happen once all these mandates begin and how you're going to make decisions based on where your life is going ahead afterward, then hit the subscribe button below, because when we have these conversations, we need to use this information to make our mental preparedness ready for whatever decisions we have to make as Americans, as people, as preppers, as whatever we are in the future here, to hopefully have a better plan in place than the next person. That's a lot of what survival is. And in this modern day and age and where we are right now as a country, this is survival. This is us trying to navigate our way through a crisis that has been utilized for many different things that might not necessarily help us in the sense of being more self-reliant, more self-sufficient, and successful. So, mandates are coming. We know that. We've been talking about it forever, but the federal government actually figured out the best way possible to implement the mandates without having to do it themselves and accept all the liability of said mandates. When you are in America, the best thing to rely on is the corporate infrastructure. And corporations around the country are ready to flip the switch on mandates within their own companies the second they receive FDA approval. And the White House has said that they feel that FDA approval is most likely to come in the fall of this year. Now, the FDA themselves have not said whether or not that's going to be accurate. But one thing to consider is that the FDA is in fact a government entity. They are ran by the federal government. So you have to look at that and assume that there are going to be some motivations there for them to be ready by the fall so that these mandates can be put out there. And of course, in the fall is when people start going back to school, and there's a lot going on in that time. So we want to make sure that, everybody's ready to flip the switch at the right time to get everybody on board with what it is they need to do. Now, understand that places like healthcare systems and academic systems are all deciding on whether or not to enforce said mandates right now. And a lot of those systems are waiting for that FDA approval to say yes or no to it, because for them, at least in the sense of their liability, they have justification at that point to mandate said situation in order to use the FDA as their scapegoat in the sense of any liability that might be accrued because of said mandates. So, moving on from there, we also have to be aware of the fact that these mandates are something that the military is even discussing. And the US military has been going back and forth on whether or not to require said situation, which I do speak in certain ways here to make sure that we're able to have these conversations, right? So they're trying to figure out whether or not to utilize mandates as well. And once this FDA approval comes through, you can guarantee that the military will likely start to implement the mandates similarly to the private sector. So all these things are starting to come together, and you can see that the federal government doesn't have to take that initial first step. They don't have to walk forward and say, we're doing this and you have to comply. No longer is that going to be the thing. The private sector is going to do it for them. And all everyone's been waiting for is for the FDA to say, yes, we're good to go. That's why you need to prepare now. You need to be ready now for your life to change very soon here based on what you do or don't believe in doing for yourself. I am not here to tell you what you should or should not do when it comes to your own medical care. That is not something that I feel is something I am able to comment on. It's not my business, okay? Everyone should have their own medical care as their own business and make their own decisions based on what's best for them and their family. But what I am letting you know is that there are these mandates on the way, and you have to be ready for whatever level of compliance you're willing to do to cause you problems based on what you do in your personal life, aka your job, your source of income, your ability to go to school. You know, if you're in college, you can expect a lot of college campuses to start utilizing mandates once this FDA approval comes through. There's a lot of things that can change here very quickly where you'll have to decide and make that decision, yes or no, in that moment. And the best thing to do is to prepare ahead of time and be ready for when that decision has to be made. And what we're hearing is that fall is a good time to kind of look out for when it comes to this approval. And what we're also hearing is that once this approval occurs, then these mandates are going to come out in droves from a lot of different sources, aka the private sector. So be ready for whatever might happen in the sense of your ability to earn an income. Be ready for whatever might happen in the sense of your ability to acquire an education. There's a lot of things moving forward here that we might not have much power over because private entities can dictate a lot of these things in a much different capacity than what the federal government can do. And in fact, it's much easier for them to demand said mandates than the federal government would be able to do because of all the court battles and everything else they'd have to go through in order to do it. So understand that this is how it's going to be implemented. This is how they're going to get the job done. And this is something you have to prepare for right now. You have to have a backup plan. You have to know whether or not you're going to comply or not. You have to know what you're going to do in the sense of your medical care for you and your family ahead of time. Don't get caught blindsided by this decision you're going to have to make here at some point in time. These are things that we all have to consider and be ready for. And part of prepping is looking a little bit ahead into the future and being ready for those decisions to have to be made instead of being caught blindsided by anything. Because if that's what's happening, then you're not in the right state of preparedness is where you need to be. So that's why I wanted to have this conversation, was to kind of get you ready for all of this to happen and get you ready mentally to start figuring out whether or not you're going to have to make a move. You can find out now. I guarantee it, many of you will be able to find out through your employer or through your school whether or not this is something that they might be considering or whether or not they're waiting on that approval from the FDA to possibly flip the switch. And it's an easy conversation to have. I definitely would try to have it at least with someone in a superior position, but it's not that hard to ask a question in a certain way that doesn't make it sound like a serious situation, but it at least allows you to gather the information you need in that moment to know whether or not this decision is going to be coming up here soon, okay? Understand, I'm trying to help you get ahead of this whole situation. I am not here trying to broadcast or trying to persuade anyone to do anything or not do anything. That is not my goal here. My goal here is to give you this information so that you can use it to your benefit and you can understand that this is what you should expect here very soon. We all have to make our own personal decisions. We definitely have to in this day and age. But if you're not prepared to make those decisions, and it might be forced upon you here very soon, that's going to make making the decision that much harder, okay? Understand that right now, here's what's being reported, okay? NPR is saying that there's 100,000 new cases per day right now. NPR, I know. But what I'm saying is that we're seeing this all happen again. And these were the justifications that were used back when the lockdown started. Right now they're saying that Houston, Texas, and their local healthcare system is overwhelmed and not able to keep up. And that's why the lockdowns happened last time around, because, you know, the hospital systems weren't going to be able to keep up with everything that was going on. So they're either going to have to implement lockdowns once again, which we've talked about here before, or they're going to have to rely on mandates to try to get all this stuff figured out. And these mandates are going to come from these private sector companies and businesses and healthcare systems and possibly the US military, because that approval gives that justification to do so. And the numbers that are being reported on right now also justify the means. So this is where we are. This is exactly what's happening. You all have to understand that, you know, this decision is coming, and you definitely have to be prepared for it. Don't be caught off guard, and be understanding of the fact that you might work for a company right now that in a month or two could require something that you might not be willing to do. And these are things that you have to be ready for and have a backup plan for. It's coming. And they figured out the best way to roll out mandates throughout the entire country, which was through the private sector, not from the government. Because you know what? Private companies can do a lot more, and you have a lot less recourse for them doing it than the government itself. And this is actually the most efficient way to do it. So it should concern you if you're worried about whether or not you're going to comply with something like a mandate and you have a job right now with a company that is most likely going to operate in that fashion. I wanted to give you guys a heads up. It's just a warning for you to get ready for making these decisions that might be difficult. And it might be something you're not even sure about right this second. But this can hopefully buy you some time to really let you dive into whether or not you're wanting to be part of that whole situation or not. And it gives you the chance to make that plan B if need be. So, look, I'm just trying to get this conversation out there. I'm trying to give you a heads up. I want all of you to be successful. Prepping is difficult. It takes energy, it takes sacrifice, it takes income, right? It's expensive in many ways. And if you lose your income because of this whole situation that's coming out right before our eyes, how are you going to be better prepared when you're not even able to afford the things that you need on a daily basis? So this all will affect your ability to be better prepared. And you need to make sure that it won't by having plans in place now for how you're going to deal with these mandates when they come. Because they are on their way. They're just not coming in the way we originally thought. And this is something that we should be prepared for as a community, because we might have to help each other out a little bit, you know? And one day, you know, maybe I'll explain how I got out of somewhere like California and increased my quality of life and my ability to afford my bills and everything else, maybe on a live stream. So catch me on Monday and we can talk about it. But this is something serious that we all need to really think about, because right now we have the time, but that time is running out and you need to be ready for all these things to happen. Hopefully this gave you something to think about. Hopefully this helps you in your planning and preparation for you and your family, especially moving into this uncertain future that we're heading towards. And if you need anything from me at all, magicprepper.com. Comment below, let me know your thoughts. Do you think your employer, your school, do you think the military is all gonna roll out mandates soon? Do you know people who are specifically waiting on this approval in order to move forward? Because that is exactly what this is all going to come together as. One big thing of, well, we got everything we needed and it's all ready to go, so flip it on. And that's exactly what we need to watch out for. So, thank you guys so much. I appreciate all the support, and that's gonna be it for Magic Prep.